couple weeks left to go in the regular season. Do the Celtics have a set starting lineup? Joe Mazzulla? Not so much. We'll talk about that, how it impacts the rotations, what I'd like to see from Tatum and Brown as far as when they play, and then an excellent point by Tom Westerholm. I'll let you digest that for a second. Yeah, an excellent point by Tom Westerholm about the Jaylen Brown interview, and maybe that changes your perspective or maybe shifts your energy when it comes to it. I'll talk about it all right now on the Locked On Celtics podcast.
Be ever ready. Recognize the city of champs. Boston, baby, we do what you can't. Locked on number 18, Tatum and Brown, J-team, step back. We gon' wet that and slay teams. Of course, the Celtics, who else could it be? Screaming like KG with the Larry O.B. Karalis above average, assessing the team status. Best daily pod, no cap, salary matching. Clutch like Bird the DJ, keep John on replay. Prime time, dapping up the truth on the sideline. Raining J's, how it started, raising banners, how we finished. Locked on Celtics pod, home of the winners. B.
Hey there, welcome back to the Locked On Celtics podcast right here on the Locked On Podcast Network, where it is your team every day, and I'm here for you every day, Monday through Friday, with a free, fresh podcast dropped directly to your device. Whatever app you want to use, however you want to listen to podcasts, this show is there. So subscribe wherever you get your podcasts, and on YouTube, watch the show, get a sense of my mannerisms and all the when I'm really going off on a tangent, all that stuff. Well, why not? What the hell? I'm John Karalis. I used to play, and now I cover the Celtics for Boston Sports Journal. I wrote a book called Boston Celtics All-Time All-Stars, and that's available on johnkaralis.com if you want a signed copy. This is the Friday show, so, a little loose. We're going to have some fun with this. Celtics practiced on Thursday. They are back. It's nice to be in the practice facility there and watch these guys kind of going through their preps for the home stretch, the final 9 games. Later on, we'll talk about a little bit more about the Jaylen Brown thing and an important piece of context that I think in Tom Westerholm, who joins me in a second, brought this up, and it adds a new kind of perspective on what Jaylen Brown was saying, at least in the piece that was on The Ringer. But let's start off. Well, what the hell? Let's just bring Tom Westerholm in. Hi, Tom.
I've been yelling, hey, get me in here. No.
Yeah. I can see you screaming and waving, and that just made me want to let you wait some more. Let's start with the starting lineups, because Joe Mazzulla asked about it at practice. It's a topic that a lot of people are kind of trying to work through, and who knows what the hell. We've talked about it a little bit. I've talked about it a little bit on the podcast. And once again, when asked about Robert Williams being in the starting lineup, Joe Mazzulla was like, are we sure that that's the starting lineup? And he said, what was the quote that he said? How did I just have this quote in front of me?
I got it if you want it here.
You got it? Yeah.
Yeah. So they asked him if Rob's going to be coming off the bench more consistently. He said, it's just going to depend on who we're playing, who else is healthy, and what the matchups are. So Grant started, Derek has started, and Rob has started. So So putting our team in a bind, like this is our starting lineup, just doesn't maximize our roster and the lineups that we can play. So we just have to see.
So that on its surface sounds fine.
Sure.
Sounds fine. They got depth. They got players. Maybe sometimes, Grant Williams is a better choice in the starting lineup. Maybe sometimes Derek White is the better choice in the starting. And maybe sometimes Robert Williams is indeed the better choice. But Tom, professional athletes, they love routine. They love to know exactly what they're going to do every day. They know when they're going to get into the games. They like to know that they're getting into the game. They want to feel like they're prepared. So they prep themselves a certain way. And maybe that's a little overblown, but I know that when you come in to the locker room and you're not sure what your role is going to be that day, just kind of throws you off just a little bit, and then you can get it back real quick. But you're focusing on a game. You're focusing on a game plan. You're focusing on who are my matchups. Well, is your matchup a starter, or is your matchup some guy off the bench? Who should I be paying attention to? Because if I know I'm guarding these two guys, then I'm going to focus more on these two guys. But all of a sudden, I'm coming off the bench. I'm like, wait a minute, I didn't really do much to check on their eighth man. You can't know everything all the time. It's like it's tough to digest all of that stuff. So I think I think there's a good and bad thing with that attitude.
Well, I mean, and we've talked about it before, but I think one of the things that we're increasingly seeing is that a good, I think we used this exact phrase before. A good problem to have is still a problem. It's still just and that's what the Celtics are running into here, where it's great that you have all this depth and that you have Robert Williams and that you have Derek White and that, I mean, Malcolm Brogdon mostly comes off the bench as the sixth man, and that's great too, except that it, kind of interferes with Derek White's playing time, and that's kind of a problem because Derek White is really good, but that gets solved if you put Derek White in the starting lineup, but then that puts Robert Williams back in here. We, round and round and round and round we go in circles, and that is why this, good problem to have is still a problem. So I think, when you Mazzulla's right when you talk about when you talk about matchups. I mean, a lot of the times what we're talking about is the playoffs, right? You can you're building up to the playoffs, these last few games of the regular season, and hopefully Rob stays healthy and all of that stuff. But when we talk about the matchups, what we're really talking about is when teams have a lot of time to scout the other team. That's when it really matters. And I think in that case, the Celtics will be fine because you can put, you'll know going into the series probably who is going to be starting. You'll have at least a day in between every game where you can tell guys, hey, Rob, you're coming off the bench this game, prepare for this guy. And it's just, that's why the playoffs are such a different game, is because there's so many fewer games, and there's more time to prepare, and you're playing the same team over and over. So I think it probably won't be the biggest deal in the world, but you're not wrong. It has to be kind of confusing for a lot of these guys throughout the season. You're in, you're out. One day Derek White is playing 40 minutes. One day he's playing 16 because everybody was healthy all of a sudden. And it's you want to talk about one reason the Celtics have looked a little inconsistent. I'm sure that's one of them. It's just on a night to night basis, just kind of the roles could change so drastically if you're not, one of the Jays.
That's the thing. And that's kind of what I was talking about. First of all, today's show brought to you by FanDuel Sportsbook, the official sportsbook of Locked On. Make every moment more. Visit FanDuel.com/LockedOn today to get started. It's hard for a player to, in the regular season, to be like, okay, we're playing Sacramento. I'm starting. Okay. I'm got to worry about, let's just pick guys in the De'Aaron Fox. And then, I got to go. And okay, Indiana, Halliburton, what's he do? And you're not really worried about guys off the bench. Wait a second. Who is this guy again? I remember this. But if it's Celtics and, let's just say it's Miami in the first round. Well, okay. Now you have days to, I can focus completely on Miami because I know it's the only team we're going to see for the next 2 weeks. Or, hopefully less, but that's the team. So then you can know every little thing. Then you're taking home your scout book and you're, okay, I remember this. I remember this about Max Strus. I remember this about, Tyler Hero. I remember all of this stuff about, all right, I remember this guy's tendencies. And that's what it is, the little tendencies. When you're going from team to team to team, city to city to city, different, you lose sight of all the little tendencies that everybody has. When you're preparing for a playoff game, a playoff series, then okay, yes, I got all of this stuff all lined up, and I can be prepared. So that does help. And the final 2.5 weeks left. That still has to be some level of preparation, right? You still have to have some level of cohesiveness. You still want to have a base, a baseline of, well, okay, I know I'm playing next to these guys. And frankly, for the Celtics, the different starting lineups that we're talking about are so drastically different that it does change a lot about something like Jayson Tatum.
Yeah.
If you're starting next to Derek White, or if you're starting with Robert Williams, Well, now you've got a guy in the dunker spot or versus playing 5 out. And as we saw in Sacramento, with no Rob in the dunker spot, heavy dose of Tatum in the post. And you can't do that necessarily with Rob in the dunker spot. It just brings natural help into the equation, into the lane. With that, let's just take a second here to award our Nissan Most Electric Player of the Week. And we're going to give it to Jayson Tatum. It's been a while for Jayson Tatum, but his performance against Sacramento, especially, that's the performance that I'm giving him the Electric Player of the Week just based on that, because he got back to attacking. He understood that, Sabonis isn't going to be blocking many shots down there. So I'm just going to keep going, attack. That kind of play, okay, he didn't hit a lot of free throws. His shooting was a little bit off still, but that performance, when you talk about electric, like the all-new, all-electric 2023 Nissan Ariya, that was an electric performance. Brilliantly fierce in the sense that those post-ups are exactly what you need to get a guy like Tatum going. So if you're going to start Derek White, then you can play that certain style with him. If you're going to start Robert Williams, then you got to play a different style. In fact, then the ball comes out of his hands a lot more, and you should be putting the ball in Marcus Smart's hands, and you're running a more pick-and-roll heavy offense because you've got that lob threat, and then Smart is spraying the ball around, and Tatum is catching the ball on the move and driving. So, yes, matchups, but also styles.
Yeah, for sure. Also, Robert Williams, Jayson Tatum per cleaning the glass. Their lineups so far, plus 12.3 points per 100 possessions. Overall, offensively, they're scoring 122.2 points per 100 possessions. So, yes, I think that when you start Derek White, the lineups with Tatum are conducive to him playing that more electric and fierce style of play.
Elegantly powerful, some might say.
Some might call him elegantly powerful. But when you put Rob in there, the offense is still fantastic, right? Like Tatum plus Rob, that works very well too. So I think you're definitely right. Like it is a different style of play, but it works both ways. Both those guys quite good.
Quite good. So it'll be interesting to see where the Celtics go with this. The 2023 Nissan Ariya packs pin you to your seat power, premium intelligence, all in one electric vehicle. It's the new all-electric 2023 Nissan Ariya, the electric vehicle for people who love to drive. Shop now at nissanusa.com. More on the starting lineup and all of that stuff when we come back. Thanks for making Locked On Celtics your first listen every day. Head on over to the Locked On NBA feed. You'll get 2 great podcasts to catch up on the entire league. Locked On Game to Game NBA gets you caught up on every game, the specifics, how each went, thanks to all the local hosts. And then Locked On NBA, which I host on Wednesdays with Jake Madison of Locked On Pelicans, gets you caught up on the big picture stuff, the big heady discussions. So that's all on the Locked On NBA feed. Let's bring Tom Westerholm back in. And Tom, the starting lineup stuff, it has a major impact on the rotations, on the bench guys. You do have to keep in mind, maybe sometimes the starting lineup is a reflection of who do you want coming off the bench. And the pairing of Robert Williams with Malcolm Brogdon is an interesting one because Brogdon loves to drive, especially loves to drive left. And if you give him an outlet, if you give him that lob threat or a dump off, it does give him the opportunity to finish a little bit more at the rim. So there is some legitimacy to saying, hey, you know what? For this season, right now, because Rob has missed so much time, let's just go with what works. We know that Derek White deserves the minutes. Next year is next year. We don't know who's going to stick around. We don't know how it's going to go. Next year's next year. This year, 5 out. Al Horford is playing just incredibly out on the perimeter. Just roll with it. You're still a pretty good defensive team, regardless. Let's give Malcolm the fresh toy to play with in the second quarter. knowing that closing lineups can be anything at this point. So we're not even worried about that. And maybe we make too much of the starting lineups, but giving Malcolm Brogdon more of that lob threat and playing that group together, maybe you see the style that last year's starting lineup played kind of shift over to the second unit with Rob and Malcolm, and you throw one of the starters, one of the Jays and Grant Williams, and probably another one of the starters because of the playoffs. But you're not gonna have like full bench units.
No.
But if you do Malcolm, Rob, I don't know, Tatum, Grant, and whatever, Derek White or whoever else, that could be. I mean, Jesus, that's a hell of a second unit.
It is. I mean, and not for nothing. I think, and I realize that it's like it sounds like a bit when I say this, but Sam Hauser, right? Like,
yes.
If you wanted to kind of imitate that early season second unit, you put Rob in there with that group. The spacing, it's not just a 5-out situation, right? Then you have like the floor is completely spaced around whoever's inside, and if that's Rob, that's great, right? And that does, to your point about Brogdon trying to get to the hoop, or about Tatum trying to get to the hoop and playing a little bit more pick and roll heavy when Rob's in the game. If you surround them with Brogdon, if you surround Tatum with Brogdon, Grant and Hauser, I mean, Derek White obviously too has been shooting really well this season, but just kind of that pure like okay, this guy's out there to catch and shoot, because when you got somebody out there who's like that, the defense, it's almost an advantage for you that the defense knows what he's out there to do, right? Because it's like, okay, we got to close out to that guy because the only thing he wants to do is shoot. So yeah, I mean, like, whatever direction you want to go there in the second unit, I do like that. We talked about it, the good problem still being a problem. The nice thing about having too many good players is that when you say you need more starting quality guys on that second unit, when you get to the playoffs, the good news is you have a lot of starting quality guys. And then, like your starter quality guys are playing against 8th and 9th men. So if you got Rob out there with that second unit and you got him with Tatum and you got some spacing around them and Brogdon, like you were saying, I mean, that's a fun group, and can certainly, well, I'm not going to say certainly because we don't know yet, but on paper should allow the Celtics to get a little bit farther without getting quite so worn down like they did last year.
Maybe the bigger question is not necessarily just the starting lineup, but the rotations.
Yeah.
And one thing I'd like to see kind of solidified is who you starting the second quarters with, Jaylen or Jayson? Which of those two guys are you starting the second quarters with? Because it's gone back and forth. And historically, it's been Jayson Tatum. Recently, it's been Jaylen Brown. And they kind of go back and forth. And against Sacramento, it was great. Jaylen was really good in the beginning of the second quarter. They just play differently enough where Tatum is more of the distributor and Jaylen is more the attacker.
Yeah.
And again, maybe it just is hey, today we like this matchup to start the second quarter, and you just have to adjust to it in the playoffs or whatever. But those guys especially, the routine, no matter what, those guys especially kind of want that I know when I'm coming out, and I don't like the uncertainty of, I'm staying in the game or I'm coming out of the game now. They don't like that. I'd like to see that kind of solidified.
Yeah, I think that's fair. I mean, and the thing with those two is that with the other guys, like there might be matchups here and there that you want to like kind of fiddle things around. Jaylen and Jayson, you can write that in stone. Like however you want to do it is fine. But like with them, with those two especially, both of them are going to play. When you get to the playoffs, both of them are going to play 40 minutes a game. Both of them are going to be in there for every big moment. Just, like I said, use a pen. You don't have to use a pencil for that one.
Yeah. And I think more for Jaylen, I think more for Jaylen, because one thing I would really like to start seeing with Jaylen is a little bit more consistency in how he's used as far as times he's in and out and that fourth quarter stuff. We've talked about how, look, I think it's a really important thing to start I mean, immediately, but soon, making Jaylen Brown feel like, all right, this isn't a 1-2 situation. This is a partnership. It's you and Tatum. Now, we understand. I think maybe he doesn't, because a player's own ego is, and I'm not saying this in a negative way at all.
No.
Your own ego is going to be what makes you great in the NBA. Like, what makes certain players amazing. Like Steph Curry, his ego is got to be massive to take the shots that he takes.
Yep.
You're going to have a massive ego to be like, oh yeah, I'm pulling this, I'll never forget. Like, it's a famous kind of scene from a few seasons ago where he's driving in and out and like, he like literally running away from the basket. Then he turns, pivots, and fires. Steve Kerr's like, what? And then it goes in and he just starts laughing. That is the ego that I'm talking about.
It's across the board, man. If you're a shooter, you got to have a big ego. If you're a driver, you got to have enough ego to be like, yeah, this guy's like 7 inches taller than me.
Yeah.
Nah, I can finish.
Right.
I can get it
John
over
Morant. Donovan Mitchell, like especially those smaller guys,
Yeah. If I spin, I'm going to get the whole way around this guy. And I feel good about that.
Yes. Yes.
What?
That is ego. And you just want to make sure that all of that is kind of satisfied, and that Jaylen especially is just like, look, you gotta make it all be like a partnership. You just got to make it all a partnership. Which brings us to Jaylen Brown's comments that I talked about at length in yesterday's podcast. But you brought up a great point for once. That
everybody is surprised.
Yes. Broken clock, dot.
Yeah.
No, you brought up an excellent point that adds a layer of perspective to this.
We'll see if I can still get it off. Get this point off after that hit to my ego.
Ooh. All right. Here's a hit to your ego. Bye. We'll get to Tom's point, which is indeed a good one. Next. First, today's show also brought to you by Ibotta. Like, we're all going shopping. There's certain things that we have to do all the time, and that's grocery shopping, getting your kids' school supplies in a few months. I know they're still in school, but I'm sorry. In a few months, you're going to be back to school shopping. Hate to break it to you. Life moves fast. You're going to be doing all that stuff. So why not get rewarded for it? You're buying stuff anyway. You're spending the money anyway. So why not get cash back? You earn cash back on every shopping trip with Ibotta, and it's cash. They give you cash back on hundreds of grocery items, from produce to personal care to pantry items. You can either link a loyalty account or upload your receipt after you shop to get your cash back. It's super easy. The average Ibotta user earns $120 a year in real cash back. That's like another shopping trip. Unless you have a family, that's like half a shopping trip. But regardless, why not recover that cost or get rewarded? Say, hey, $120 in that cash. Let's go out and have a nice dinner. Let's go spend some money on something. Typical basket of groceries was over $50 more expensive at the end of 2022 than the beginning of the year due to inflation. So you can earn 2.5 times that in cash back from Ibotta, even more potentially depending on how much you use it. So go to Ibotta right now. They are offering you $5 just for trying it and using the code LOCKED when you register. Go to the App Store or Google Play and download the free Ibotta, IBOTTA app, and use the code LOCKED. Again, IBOTTA in the Google Play or App Store. Use the code LOCKED. So Jaylen Brown made headlines, and since these stories came out, Jaylen's clamming up. He's not talking about nothing to do with none of this stuff. Even if he drops 50 against Indiana, I wouldn't be surprised if he takes the night off from the media. I think he just wants to let all this stuff cool off if he can. But Tom, you had an interesting point about the ringer piece, which was done. I made the point yesterday in the podcast that interview was done in January, and the Times piece was done in March. The ringer piece had a lot of stuff about his future, and you had a good point about that.
Well, yeah, I just think like when you look at the timing, that piece was done in January, right? That's about what, like a month before the trade deadline. Like
Yep.
there was a lot of stuff floating around in the ether at that point about, Jaylen's future, about, kind of where he might end up there. I think it was still pretty fresh off. I know he mentioned in the story that he had talked to I believe it was Tatum and Brad on the call regarding the Kevin Durant rumors. And I think when you think about like how much stuff has happened since then, um, you know, that's a long time to kind of have a quote sitting out there. And look, I thought Logan Murdoch, I don't know him personally. I thought he did a nice job with the piece. I mean, he got a really good stuff from Kyrie Irving. That's not easy to do.
No,
Like he talked to Jaylen very honestly about Kyrie. I thought he did a really good job, good even-handed job with the story. But this is one of the things that I think for basketball fans and for sports fans in general, when you're reading stuff, there's a big difference between like day-to-day stuff that you get, like the really good day-to-day stuff that beat writers do, and the like all the all the work, all the flights, everything that goes into that, and feature writing where guys take a while to write a story, right? Where you kind of talk to an editor, the editor says, I think you should try to get this guy's perspective, and you just kind of go back and forth and eventually get the story out there. And these quotes, like especially when you see like NBA Central like pulling a quote out and plastering it on Twitter, and it looks like it happened right now, and it didn't. It like this one happened back in January at a time when the situation was different. And I think it's very important to get those quotes out there because they represent a moment in time. But we're now 2 months removed from that. We're at a different point in time. And I'm not saying that the situation is better or worse or anything. It's just different. Like we are at a new spot now. So, and we'll be at a new spot in 2 months, and we'll be at a very new spot by the time Jaylen is actually due for another contract. So, I just think like that's really important to keep in mind, that these that quote represented a moment in time that had happened a couple of months before, largely due to the nature of features as opposed to kind of the day-to-day coverage.
Yeah, and that is an important thing to kind of get out there, because the perspective of when a guy said something, we've all done this, right? We've all said something in the heat of the moment, or not even the heat of the moment, at a point in time where, you say something about work because at that point you're having some issues with your boss, or your significant other, because at that point you guys have been fighting for a couple of days, and like you say some things, and then after some perspective, after some time to think about things, and after some time to talk through some things, you go, you know what, not that it wasn't that bad, right? And it's easy to have your emotions get the best of you, especially Jaylen Brown, who says, I spent a lot of time alone. And this is one of the things that I wrote about in Boston Sports Journal. Is the first thing I brought up. And it's the first thing I brought up in this the podcast yesterday. When you spend a lot of time alone with your own thoughts, those thoughts can get away from you. And the extreme sides, the extreme happiness, the extreme sadness, each side can kind of make its case, so to speak, when you're sitting there by yourself without bouncing things off of somebody else. This is why talk therapy is so important, and why I emphasize that to so many people. Talk therapy, talking through things. When you say certain things out loud, you're like, oh, wait a second. That didn't sound right coming out of my mouth. It sounded good in my head, but coming out of my mouth, I don't know. I don't know where Jaylen stands on some of the things that he said. Maybe it is the same, but I don't think he meant for any of that stuff to come out 2 weeks, 3 weeks before a playoff run. I think that stuff coming out in January, when at that point everything was cool. They're the number one seed. I think if it had come out in January and we didn't just see them struggle, we didn't just have this post All-Star break stuff, would the reaction have been as kind of like, I don't know how we would even describe the reaction, but would it have been as kind of big as the reaction is now? Or would people have been like, it's okay.
I think it still would have been noteworthy because I mean, again, we still would have been pre-trade deadline at that point, right?
Yeah,
Like,
sure.
So I think I thought, I think it's good. It's important. It's noteworthy. It's certainly newsworthy. Like the quotes themselves, I mean, yeah, they were pretty strong, right? I think like Jaylen is trying to send a message. I thought, if you're a Celtics fan and you're freaking out about it, I would point you with, very, very, very strongly to Adrian Wojnarowski's report, or, where he was talking, he kind of said like, look, this sounded more like kind of leverage. This sounded more like him kind of being realistic than him, trying to be incendiary. That to me, like, just like reading the tea leaves, that to me sounds like Woj talked to somebody and that person said, look, like, let's calm down a little bit. Like, it's a year and a half before he becomes a free agent. Like, don't like that. Woj doesn't say that kind of thing without some prompting, shall we say. But I do think, like, they were strong quotes, and I think they're strong no matter what the context of the season is, whether it's, pre-trade deadline quotes or post 15 game skid type quotes, like whatever it is, they're still noteworthy. But I do think that, like, it's important to kind of remember the context of them when you read them, because that stuff matters.
Yeah. This is something.
And side note, sorry to cut you off, I also think like Jaylen was trying to say that too, right? Like he said, like he felt like some things that he had said, I don't think he said exactly they were getting taken out of context, but he sort of like suggested that, like, that he didn't completely agree with the direction that they were being taken necessarily.
Yeah. I feel like, and this is something I tried to make that point pretty strongly in yesterday's podcast.
Yeah.
And I tried to make that point here in my Boston Sports Journal piece. Who Tatum is, I mean, who Jaylen is as a person fuels a lot of the things that he says. And he could have said some things that were like, you could probably craft some answers that would have just deflected, but that's not who Jaylen is. He's not a deflector necessarily. He'll say things for better or worse. And this, I think, is as much negotiating as it is anything.
Yeah.
And he's a union rep. I used to be a union rep. I've gone through collective bargaining. I've gone through trying to get my people raises. When you have leverage, you use it.
Yep.
And he has leverage now. And on the one side of things, he has, I've been in trade rumors, and I'm playing on a below market value contract. Those are indisputable facts.
Yep.
Now he's up for the Supermax, potentially, if he makes all NBA. The threat of like, hey, I'd like to actually have more of a role. I'm sacrificing. I'm doing my good. I'm being the good soldier, but I could do a whole lot more. Just throwing it out there. Just throwing it out there. That kind of stuff. I don't blame him for doing that one bit, because this is when you do it. Because the team, Brad Stevens, aw shucks, Midwestern guy, who cares about? He will exert pressure when he needs to exert pressure. He's no dummy.
Nope. You
don't run a team like this without having some killer instinct in you. You don't be a successful coach, as successful as he is, without having some killer instinct in you. Come on now. Don't let the packaging fool you. This stuff, when it comes to business in the NBA, when it comes to business, you gotta hold your ground. And the Celtics don't have any leverage here. It's all in Brown's, because he's the one who can leave. Yep. He's the one who can say, and the Celtics with Tatum's money, with the other money that they've committed, you can't get to another max player. You got to either keep Jaylen Brown or you're going the 1-star route real fast. So it's not like they were never going to max him out, but he's making sure. Yeah. And I'm betting that he wants a no trade clause in his contract. 5 years guaranteed, no trade clause, all of that. Like, he's going to want all of that and his car shined, and some cupcakes at his locker every day from, Magnolia. Make them the good ones, Wick.
Yeah, I mean, first of all, for sure. Also, regarding the Supermax, I don't know if you saw Fred Katz over at The Athletic did a poll regarding Julius Randle and his chances of making the All-NBA team. And in his poll, Jaylen was pretty solidly in the All-NBA. I think it would have been third team among the forwards. But that was only, and that didn't count if he got like guard votes as well. Interesting. I thought that was interesting because that obviously makes a huge difference. The other thing I did want to say, I thought, like, again, to Logan Murdoch's story, he did an interesting appearance on Bill Simmons' podcast. And the other thing that he said was, it's not so much that in Murdoch's kind of perspective, it's not so much that Jaylen, is like demanding that he be, equal with Tatum or that he's demanding, I mean, he wants the Supermax, but it's not even part of it is too, just like this guy has been in trade talks so many times. And especially after last year, when the Celtics made it to the finals, for him to then so shortly afterwards start hearing his name again with KD, I think part of it, I thought it was a really good point. Like, part of it probably is just like, he wants that to stop. Like, I don't think he wants to hear this all the time, especially when you think about the ways that he's invested in the community. He started, a business in the community. He's tried to make a difference in terms of, just all the like the social justice stuff that really matters to him. Like, all of this stuff, I think he wants to really invest in a community. And in return, he would like to know that he is part of that community, that he's going to continue to be part of that community, which I mean, look, if how can you possibly blame him for wanting that? That's about as reasonable as it gets.
It's very reasonable. It's a very reasonable. Just make that stuff stop. Can we? And that's why the note, I wouldn't even be surprised if Brad Stevens like, so how much is a no trade clause worth to you? No, he wouldn't do that.
I don't think he would do that. But if he did,
but it'd be funny.
Yeah, I feel like Jaylen would just raise two fingers and be like, "It's worth this much."
Yeah. Oh, okay. Well,
right.
All right. Okay, we're gonna end this. I want to end on a positive Jaylen Brown thing, and something I've been dying to talk about here. Okay.
Yeah.
Because he keeps using the energy shift thing. I am fascinated by the evolution of the energy is about to shift. Because he tweeted that out, last season?
Yep.
January last season.
Mm-hmm.
And everybody's like, ooh, what's that mean? And the Celtics started getting good at that about it. So
the game right before, that was what made it so notable, is they played well once. Jaylen tweeted that, and everybody's like,
okay.
And then it actually completely manifested. Yeah.
Does Jaylen know something? Did something happen in the locker room that Jaylen was like, oh, the energy is about to shift. Watch this.
Well, I believe Smart came back, if I recall correctly, like that game. Like Smart,
or something like that.
Yeah.
So we, the collective media, I think Abby was probably the one who asked. So what did you mean by that? And he blatantly explained that it was an astrology thing. That there was something about, I don't know, Mercury retrograde, something. It had to do with astrology. Okay, he said that.
I have the quote here if you want it.
Do you? Oh, great, Tom with the quotes.
So this was on ESPN. He said, "You ever been in a time when things don't seem to be going right in life? Everything just seems to be going wrong. I just felt like just for everybody, things were about to shift. Certain times of the year, actually, it was a retrograde, which means the planets were spinning in the opposite direction for people who believe in that type of stuff. And I knew at that moment the energy was about to change." And then he said, "So I tweeted it out and we went on a win streak."
So it was an astrology thing. It was an astrology thing. It wasn't but the most fascinating part about all this is the media, the assembly, everybody basically rejected his explanation. And every time this comes up, they bring up, oh, Jaylen, hey, that energy's about to shift. The media has said, nope, we don't care about you saying that it's about astrology and planets spinning in the opposite direction, which is categorically impossible. But whatever. We're going to still make it about basketball. We're going to say you called it. And he's like, yeah, you know what? Yeah, I guess I did call it. Yeah. Yeah. Sure. Yeah. And
that'll sell some t-shirts. Let's do it.
Yeah. I'm going to put on some t-shirts. He came back the other day, like after, I think it was after the Sacramento games. Like, oh, energy shift. You know, we're looking for that. He's like, he explained it. The media said, nah. We're going to go with the other narrative. That's more fun. Yeah. He's like, yeah, what the hell? Why not?
Yeah, okay.
I'll cash in on this. You guys want to say, sure. Yeah, I meant it. I was sure 100% talking about basketball. Give me a few $1,000s for your these energy shift shirts. Like, yeah, sure. You know, whatever. He should create an energy drink called Energy Shift.
Oh, man, you're giving away free game there. You should edit that out so that you can pitch it to him next time.
Pitch it to him?
Yeah, I think so. If Smart can have a cereal, he could have an energy.
He could have an energy drink.
Energy shift drink. Yeah.
I mean, yeah.
For sure.
Think about that. Sure. Shift your energy into high gear with Energy Shift.
Yeah.
Providence College mug that I'm showing, but
that'd
be amazing.
The ad shows a planet slow to a stop and then start spinning the other direction.
Wait. Jaylen drinks the drink and then starts running Superman style in the opposite direction, and the Earth just starts reversing course. Boop, 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 boop.
Listen, Jaylen, you have a t-shirt line. We can like, I'll advertising, like, we can help.
Do it.
Like, call, you know.
This is like Detroiters. Have you ever seen Detroiters?
I have not seen Detroiters.
Yeah, it's pretty funny. Yeah, it's what's his name? Tim, what's his name from I Think You Should Leave.
Oh.
So Detroiters with Tim Robinson and Sam Richardson, who's also in I Think You Should Leave. That's they run an ad agency. And like they're the screw ups who took over his father's ad agency because the dad went insane. So it's very much a sitcom with the I Think You Should Leave kind of skit pacing.
Yeah.
But yeah, that's basically what we just did.
I like it. I also want to, before we go, I also did want to really quickly say, you said before we started this, like the energy shifting thing, that it was like a more positive Jaylen thing. I think we always say this, but I do want to make it abundantly clear that, like, I think Jaylen is an interesting, smart guy who is very talented, and is like I hope it didn't come across that we were saying anything negative about him.
No, right.
Like, he's great at basketball. He's smart. He's interesting. He's introspective. All this stuff. So I don't know. I hope it didn't come across like we were just like trashing him.
No, I reject this, like the energy shift. Tom's a hater. Tom's a hater. No, look,
I'm just running as fast as I can the other direction, trying to turn this planet.
Yeah.
Turn this podcast around.
Energy shift would work. That ad would work. Make it so you could put the energy shift into the smart cereal.
Gross. But yeah, I mean.
All right, maybe I took it a little too far.
Yeah, honestly, I'm like having heart palpitations thinking about all that sugar mixed with all that, energy drink caffeine. Like, that's.
Yeah. Hey.
Hey,
you got to close that game strong, man. You can't fade in the fourth quarter.
You better eat it in the fourth quarter then, because otherwise you're going to be crashing by the fourth quarter.
Just picture Jaylen with the smart cereal, just like at the scorers table. Just
the secret stuff from NBA Jam. It's just actually blended up energy shift drink and smart Lucky Charms or whatever they are.
All right. Well, we've officially derailed.
It's Friday. Well, Thursday today.
It's Thursday for us. Hey, but you know what? When you record a podcast and you start saying it's Friday, I think your Friday officially begins.
Ooh, I like that.
Yeah. So as I'm already in Friday mode. So Friday.
Except we're kind of in Sunday mode because we just had like 2 days off from the Celtics and they play on Friday. But
why are you gonna ruin everything, Tom?
I'm really good at it, man.
What are you gonna like? Just give me my thing.
You often tell me this that I'm very good.
I had a thing here, and you had two choices. You could roll with it, Or no.
Or I could ruin it. Well, actually, sir.
Well, actually, it's a Sunday, John. Human Twitter, Tom Westerholm, Tom_human Twitter.
Human Twitter. That might be the meanest thing you've ever said.
I feel like I should apologize for that.
I'll take it.
Like that's one that I should be like, oh, you know what? I went too far. It's like, John, I could picture like Nicole Yang like wondering like, why don't you guys talk anymore? Well, you call me Human Twitter, and you just don't bounce back from that.
Yeah. That's kind of Britta from Community is where I feel like I am with this one. I'm just the worst.
Tom, you are not Human Twitter. The worst I can give you is Human Instagram.
Okay. Well, yeah. Really always presenting my best side to the world. I like that one. Sure.
Yeah, sure. I don't even know what I meant by that, but let's go with that.
Sure.
All right. Let's say bye-bye. Bye-bye, Tom. Bye-bye, you. Thank you for see. At least this time we got our goofiness out at the end instead of all at the beginning where people go, oh, when are you guys going to start talking about basketball? Well, we did for 40 minutes, 45 minutes. So hope you enjoyed that. Little something extra to get you through the weekend. Yeah, I'll probably do a little quick podcast after the Pacers game. So I'll give you 15 minutes of something, hopefully fun to talk about. It's going to be a tough game. That first game back from a long road trip is always questionable. So hopefully the Celtics can put together a win. I'll talk about it. I'll be here for you. So subscribe wherever you get your podcasts. Watch the show on YouTube. Hop into that comment section. Join that growing Celtics community. And I would love it if you are a subscriber, if you shared the podcast, told everybody they should be listening to and watching the Locked On Celtics podcast here on the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.